6:30, let's get the show on the road. We'll call the meeting to order. Steve, can you call roll, please?
Here, McCall,
Here.
Ryan, here, Marty,
Here.
Nielsen, Dagger,
Here.
Peters,
Here.
here, Olson. There we go.
I'm like, wasn't he here?
There, Brown,
Yeah, we saw looking for clips.
Brown, there,
Austin's here.
Martinez, here, Jim Warren,
Excellent.
and Commissioner Munson.
All right. Speaking of Commissioner Munson, I believe that you are batter up number one for a briefing on anything we need to be briefed on.
I can probably just let you know it'll be a few more weeks before I get a balance sheet for the,
Yes.
yeah.
Is it gonna get back to Congress at this point?
I'm not even sure if the record to request any work at this point, because he's not listening to those either.
What, is there any way to just go through Lee and would he have access to that kind of data?
So it's in three systems. It's truly still in handwritten manuals. It is in computer system 1 and computer system 2. He did confirm to me the other day. I haven't seen it on the balance sheet, but we are gaining interest from our investments, which that's the first time in a year and a half he's agreed or committed that we are gaining interest. Now, I've never seen that on the balance sheet, so I disagree with that. I have no doubt that our investment is earning money, but it has not been displayed on the balance sheet until the other day when he sent me a sheet, but it didn't mean. So I'm still working with him. I don't know how much time he'll have this week, but he's promised we were gonna have it soon. Now that he understands our request. Other than that, the rest of my life is a little busy, so I don't have any more to report.
Totally understandable.
Uh,
I would imagine that Jason's going to provide the update on the zoning stuff. Okay, before we jump into that, I wanted to make sure that I established the scope of this meeting because it appears to be a little bit more informal because we are outside of the Tom Baker room. I do want to make sure that out of respect of everybody's time and evening, that we make sure that we focus the scope on what has been set forth in the agenda, and that is specifically the discussion about the plating. There will be additional discussion about leases, operating and development, and of course, at the end there, our 2025 meeting schedule. I bring this up only to ensure that we do stay on that kind of task, that we're not here, as I understand, to talk about our hopes and dreams of what we can eventually build up here. More so, what is the infrastructure that we need to have in order to grow the complex area. So I just wanted to make sure that I set that up, that this still is an official committee meeting. We do have agenda items and that our scope is pretty focused for the evening. So with that, Jason, I will pretty much turn the next couple over to you.
All right. Thank you very much for allowing us to come in front of your board. First, we'd like to pass around a schedule. So as we talked in the last few meetings, we are running a zoning change through the city. And that will be to clean up the entirety of the plat as we know it for Missouri Valley Fairgrounds or complex addition. So that is going to run concurrently with a plat sequence, but we started this ahead of time because the two are staggered if we start them at the same time. So we'd like them to kind of work toward the finish of the same time. They don't necessarily have to have a start sequence. So just let everybody get that. So, for the zoning change, we have multiple parties within the zoning change. First, we do have the, Burley Morton Detention Center, so we have a ownership there. We have the county as the fairgrounds complex. We have the city of Bismarck, who has a lot where they currently house a lift station. We also then have, the state of North Dakota and, more precisely the DOT. They have some, property within this plat that's auxiliary to, areas around, Centennial. So we were able to get with everybody and get everybody's blessing to get signatures for all of the components. What that does is it doesn't allow where we've got a PUD for some people allowed here and we don't have PUD after the zoning change is done. So from a city perspective, everything is clean. We get rid of that. We have nice, easy, simple zoning. City likes that and it'll track well with the plat, so things don't get lost later. We're looking for submittal here on the 20th. We've got all those signatures and then that will start within a application sequence for the city of Bismarck, whether it be a zoning change, annexation, plating. The city has a staff review period. They get all the applications in on first Monday of the month or second, depending on when things fall with holidays. They have a review meeting where they get all the department heads together. We go in there for our application piece and we walk through with them what we're asking, why we're asking, and all that. There may be or may not be some comments that are given. We have basically about a week to kind of put that together. They kind of have a go, no go feeling, you know, questions are that you need to answer minor, can you get them done? Yeah, okay, we're gonna get you set up for the planning and zoning commission meeting. So we would have then consent on the 22nd of January. And we would then roll right back around into a public hearing on February 26th. And then we would turn over, go to city commission for 2 meetings, consent and public hearing in March. So the zoning theoretically could be wrapped up by March 25th, which is great. Now let's go and talk about platting. So this area that we are going to plat, although we zoned the entire thing, right? We are really looking at the stuff kind of north of the coulee, right? North of the drainway, about doing a replat. And so when we come in, we've got a lot of things going on. There's been platting that has been done. There's been easements that have been granted over time. Some easements have been vacated. There's been new easements written adjacent and next to previously vacated easements. We're in the process of going through and deciphering all of those components. What you can't see here real well is for visualness, I tried to come in here and I just highlighted a lot of the overhead and utility easements. So all your dry utilities and your overhead utilities. And that's kind of what we see with starting with our landscape. What do we start with, right? And what can we work around? So these easements, we can't put buildings in them. We can't put structures under them, but we can use them for green space, parking, all of those types of things. The green then would designate what we've been able to track down as existing sanitary sewer easements. And then the red is a combined water and sewer easement. And so that's kind of a lot of the infrastructure that's in place on the ground, in the ground today. It's the stuff we got to work around, right? If you go to the Burley County parcel viewer and you click on the fairgrounds, you're gonna click on it and a big blob's gonna pop up, and then you're gonna have something that's gonna pop up also. Like that big thing, and then you're gonna have the thing around Buck Stop, and you're gonna have a little city lift station, right? And you say, well, that's the plat. Well, actually, that's not the plat. They've been administratively combined so that you get one parcel statement and not 17. What we've overlaid on here is actually the plat that is filed today. So if you went back and said, we'd like to break this up and have 12 tax statements, they do that, and the parcel map would look like this, where we got all these lots and these right of ways that go through here and all that. But because it's under one ownership, they've got them administratively combined. So what we want to do tonight is we want to set a couple things. First, we had talked about how you are, right? You are a public entity. And in order for people to come out and to do things publicly, and for you to provide things publicly, you need to provide what? A service. So what we want to do is we want to have infrastructure out here so that you guys can operate in a manner that you provide a service for people in the public to have, right? Roads, water, sewer, you know, all of that infrastructure stuff, the meat and potatoes. After that, that's when the glitter comes. That's when you can be like, hey, you know what? I'd like to have a lease for doing this space, and then you can put your building up and however all that shapes up. Some of the things that were talked about were outside of the infrastructure, the road networks, the easements for the utilities that you need is something that assembles some communal parking, right? And you don't want to go back to the well every time, and you guys are in the city limits. So what that means is, if you want to put a deck up, or if you want to put a building up, you've got to do a site plan, a stormwater plan, a landscape plan. You've got to go to the city. You got to submit that through the city, and you'll have a city review. All 16 departments get to look at that. They get to give you comments, you track it. And if you get through that process, you'll have a site plan approval letter. And then if you get through that, you can submit your building plans, you can get a building permit with Brady through city inspections. That's how everything will work out here because of that jurisdiction. Which is not a bad thing, because again, you guys are a public entity, you provide a public service for the public good. So what we want to do though is we want to be able, with that plat, is to be able to put that network together so that when you get past the plat, you guys can come back and you can ask, what is the next step? Well, the next step is we should probably construct those said public infrastructure items, right? Let's get the roads constructed. Let's get the utilities constructed. What that gives you is the opportunity, if we publicly dedicate right away in here, is to sign a petition asking for services. The city's policy is such that you are a developer. So when I come to this meeting tonight, I'm thinking about you guys, just like I would deal with anybody that I sit down at the table, a Ron Knutson, a Chad Walker, Chad Mullenhour, you name it, right? You guys are the same thing, because it's, this process is exactly the same thing I would sit down and talk to any one of those guys about. So in that city's policy, the grading of the roads, right, to prepare the right of way is a developer responsibility. The construction of the water and the sewer is a developer responsibility. Now, if you're a public entity, the thing that I do want to talk with the city is there any avenue for us to do that through a special assessment project? Typically, with a developer, that would be a developer borne cost. After that, we get to petition for special assessments if we choose, for storm sewer, culverts, things like that, and also for roads. So that could be then go on a 15-year assessment and be prorated out however we have the arrangement of lots. You can do this through a public right of way with a public street. The other thing that I want to ask the city is, if we move forward, and if it's the wishes of this board to move forward with a public right of way, if we can have some sort of hybrid that we would be able to come into agreements on. So for instance, would the city allow us to come in here and petition for improvements, but with the understanding that we could maybe put in like a 36 foot wide rural road that's paved with a ditch network? Or is the city gonna come back and look at it and say, no, we want a 40-foot street with curb and gutter and storm sewer? This is a valid conversation for the entity that you are. If it was a developer around Knutson, I'd be putting curb and gutter in here. So, wouldn't have a choice. If this board elects to do easements in a private street, every single cost is yours. Every single cost for maintenance is yours. Every single cost for any improvement that ever happens will be yours. Now, boards come and go, commissions come and go, feelings change over time. I just pointed out that having a public right of way gives you an option to forever and always have the city be able to maintain that infrastructure.
Can I interject real quick?
Yes.
Favorite thing is talking like I'm in the gardener. When we talk about the easement for streets being private, the cost will be yours. The cost is going to be each individual stakeholder's burden, or it's going to be the county's burden.
Technically, the owner of the property is Burley County.
Kind of what I figured, so that would come out of that, if we go, that would be that fund.
If they do a special assessment district, the county owns the land on both sides of whatever's improved. And the county would pay 100% of those taxes.
So do we have to get the county commission to buy in on the idea of dedicating either funding or bills to pay for special before going down that road?
Yeah, you gotta have, the county is the ownership of this, right? And so. How this sits today is, you got roads out here that have nothing, there's no easements on them, there's no right of ways, I mean. The only thing that's remotely close is this western loop, and then even when it gets out here, it strays outside. Whatever dedicated right of way was dedicated with the original plat. So. I'm not going to push you in a direction, but I will tell you that to have a public right of way, to have infrastructure, to be able to be maintained and taken care of, that is important for the longevity and for the expectation. Because again, this is a public thing, so the expectation for the public, if we're paying tax dollars, is to have a certain standard, right? And I deal with this on the land development side. I've had developers come in and not want to grade on each side of the street, we're only gonna grade the street in 50 feet out. And they can't sell the lots. They can't sell the lots because there's an expectation when people drive up into an area that they visually see something that they're used to. So the people that grade all their site and make it look good, as we say in the industry, the sizzle sells the steak, right? And that's what it is. And so when you have people coming out here and there's gonna be that public dollars attached to this, there's gonna be an expectation that this has a certain look, a standard to it. And I think that's what I would say in regards to this setup. that you want to carefully consider that and be able to meet those expectations.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So we're making it all public and that would be great. And we have like, for instance, the road to the south, like you pointed out, it does not follow. So when you make a new plot, you're going to say that road exists and we're gonna fix that issue, right?
Yes and no.
Okay.
The short answer that
Like that,
where this comes out onto DOT right away,
it's not right.
this is a connection that we're not gonna change,
Right,
okay? So we will adhere some right of way to conform to that.
you're gonna fix all the, like, those kinds of things, right? I mean, that's the first step of it.
Yep,
The plots.
we would come back to you. And we would come in and say, you know, based on what we've talked about, based on the things that you guys want to get to. Here's where we feel you could have a right of way placed in here. And then this would program certain things like parking lots and, you know, a future campground area and an area that could be, you know, sized appropriately for an equestrian center and fairgrounds and festival areas and all those things, right? So I mean, we would look at those things. We would look at how we would get sanitary sewer run through. We wouldn't wanna bring a road, you know, up and then down and up where all of a sudden you can't get that sewer to serve you properly, right? So we would be looking at all of that. And then we would try to do a quick programming of, hey, if you popped a campground here, here's what that could look like. Here's how this all can be interconnected, and here's how the spaces are getting used. What I wanted to do here was show you what we have to work around. Also show you visually what's on the ground. And then start talking about how we are going to get there, right? So we would come back with a map that we get you guys to look at. We would have a meeting. If that still seems to be appropriate for the direction, then what we would do is we would ask for that to be talked at a commission meeting so that we can get the commission to sign off on the appropriateness of the direction we're moving. Because ultimately, they will be signing the plan.
And that would be one of those instances like we've done in the past to go for P public, where this committee makes a decision, the decision is then presented to the county commission.
That's why we set it up this way.
Yeah.
Is this group makes a combined decision, this is what we'd like to do. And then you guys present to the commission.
Jason, are you able to plug in that step into the schedule that you've got here?
Yeah, and so I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about this in the beginning, just to kind of give you guys a background of kind of why we're talking about this and what's important, right? So what we wrote in a plat sequence, there's a couple things that we need to do. We need to submit what's called an SMO4. And that is a scoping sheet that we send to the engineering department. They look through their master plans. They discuss how they want to treat a certain area of development. And they will come back and give us some information relative to quantity of water, quality of water, a waiver sometimes. You know, that is information that'll be used when we submit the plat to do the stormwater management plan. And so that's about concepts. They come in and say, we're gonna give you a waiver for the CM that's out here today, but anything you develop out here, you gotta do water quality and water quantity. Well, now we need to, you know, start looking and saying, well, geez, you know, if I got a couple of parking lots here, I gotta program some detention ponds in here. And so I gotta manage my water, and anyone that comes in then later, Western Center comes in and builds something, or there's a big festival ground, then, okay. if it's not communal by the group, then a user comes in, they put their own detention in, they put their own water quality complaints in, right? So that's the first thing that we would be looking at, but we've given ourselves between now and February 5th to get through a couple steps where we could this drawn up back to you into the commission before we have our really February 21st meeting. Because we can still go and submit the scoping sheet, and we can still submit the pre-application and have the meeting. So although we had a meeting with the city, that meeting was relative to zoning. Now, this won't be new to them because we talked about a lot of things. But we want to officially have a plat meeting. And so that is a process that we need to do just to get our submittal in on the 21st. That again would then set us up, just like the zoning would, for a staff review meeting on March 10th, which we will have them already submitted a stormwater management plan concept of how we're gonna treat things up here. We'll have the plat, and then we get to have our plat review meeting. And get through that. If they deem that to be sufficient, then we would roll into March 21st for submittal of the final plat. So you're gonna have this preliminary and final plat submittals. They track a little different in time, but we gotta kind of roll both of them through. But then what that would do is, well, we submitted that final plat. The deadline was 21st, and then that next week, on Wednesday, we'd have consent for the prelim plat. And then we roll with our staff review for the final plat, get through that, and then go back right to public hearing for planning and zoning on April 23rd. And then go right into city commission for consent and public hearing in May and June. So somewhere in there, we may pull the e-brake on the zoning to finish them up at the same time. They don't necessarily have to quite track the same. I mean, we can run this to the end and then hold it to the last meeting as city commission and then bring it back on, and then they're keyed up together. But it is nice to have them finish at the same time. Then everything's attached, and when you go find things later, you can find everything you need, right? So what do you get on June 10th? On June 10th, you have a plat that's approved and ready to be recorded. Within 2 to 3 weeks from after that, you would get it signed by the appropriate parties, get it up to the city would review it. And they are sufficiently happy with that. They can lock it down and they would record that document. So guess what? Now we've got something out here that's got right of way on it. It's got easement. It's got all the things we need. You could turn around tomorrow and your board, county board, had approved for 2 things. They had approved for us to conceptually put together this project and also to plat it and zone it. So while you're working towards the end of this process, the county board could meet and they could say, well, I think we'd like to move forward with the actual construction elements, right? So that board could approve for expenditures for design, and we could do petitions. We could work with the city on getting the network put together. We can do the site plans for the parking and for the campground. And those could all be ran through the city. And then the process then to be set up for a construction season the following year. Okay. All the infrastructure could be constructed, you get roads put in, if there's additional, gas and electric and things that need to be provided, they'd be placed once the roads are constructed. Parking and campgrounds can be constructed, and guess what? You've got yourself what you need to really start going. I will say now, there's an element in here that I think you guys, once you get working, we get past, towards the end of this planning sequence of how you guys are going to operate, right? So correct me anywhere if I'm wrong here, but my understanding is that basically somebody can say, I want some space and I'm gonna do my thing, right? But really, are you, every entity, should you be having a lease of something? And then there's the board that, come in and say, well, I would like to have a 40 by 60 building, right? So then, just like, in HOA, or just like the city, if you want to do something, you go to them and you get their approval. So this board would be the responsible party to operate, approve, amend, and do all the things that you need to be doing to represent the public. So then, before somebody would come and say, well, I want to put a 40 by 60 building, I'm just gonna go to the city. Actually, you guys have somebody come that wants to put that in, and they present this to you. And they get the board's blessing to be able to do that, because it sits and it is within the conformance of how you're trying to present and operate out there. In being a public entity, then you've got a means of checks and balances to actually, get through a process for people to come out here if they wanted to do a lease and put something in, or a building, or whatever that may be. Now it's the operations part of it, right? And so you're operating this facility as kind of like a business, right?
What happens when it becomes public and all those little lines disappear? And we're sitting here telling you this is the example, they have a lease, maybe they can prove they have 8 years left on it. Is that automatically gonna go onto the plot that that's buck stop spot for 90 minutes documented, it's 80 years left? Or is that not part of this June? And that's more of the operating part.
In my eyes, you do not want to attach leases to the plat. The plat is the instrument that's conveyed to show dedication, easements, and things like that.
What is dedication? I get easement, so I'm gonna say I want a road running north and south straight through, just to make whatever, easement. What is a dedication?
So when we talk about a public right of way, let's just say there's an 80-foot strip there, that road and all the stuff's gonna sit in it. A dedication is going to be the conveyance of the plat itself. By doing it and recording it, you convey rights to the public for what you describe in the dedication part of the plat map. So in there's a dedication piece. And so you dedicate things like the ability to construct and operate gas and electric and sewer and water and storm and conveyance and road networks and public access. That is dedication.
Okay.
So the road
The
that's
works.
already there, if you take that road and you then dedicate that road in the right of way, that road will always be there for the public use. And whether it's above or below or somewhere in that dedication, like Jason said, water, sewer, electric, stormwater, all of that stays within that area that we've dedicated for public use.
The public has rights to that space
Okay,
to own, operate, maintain.
And in order to change that, the next group comes in or
Yeah.
to change that, they have to go back through the method of making a change and going through the whole process again to make a change.
So I mean-
It protects everybody.
So,
It protects everyone, but like, so I'm just sitting here thinking, I may want a north-south road, that makes things so much better, right?
Mhm.
And we decide that, that doesn't really make sense 10 years from now, the person, you would have to report a new plot, the county, like, no big deal.
you could go back and you could vacate a right of way. There is a process to vacate
Oh,
right.
sure.
And you can go in front of the city commission to ask for a vacation. So in this particular instance, we've got a lot of things in a previous plat that don't make sense.
Yeah,
So what we're saying is we're going to replat over that instrument that was recorded. And that's the easiest thing to do because if you had a title search for some reason, when they do that title, it's easier for them to know that this plat that was here. But I'm recording a new instrument over that same face, right? But the easements, typically these easements may have been written via meets and bounds and recorded through that instrument. And so we convey them on the plat because they are recorded documents that are not to be extinguished, right? Because we need to ask the rights of who the easements were granted to. But the right of way, by replatting this, the instrument previously was given to the public, which is like the city, it's in their jurisdiction, right? So by replatting over it, the city, by accepting the plat, by going through the process of planning and zoning, city commission, and having those representatives sign that plat, they are striving to, yes, we will acquiesce to replat over the previous right of ways and give you dedication of new right of ways that you're asking for. So this is about cleaning it up, about having something to give you guys an instrument to move forward with, and something that everybody can see what's being given to parties, right? So I mean, you're gonna have a right of way go through here somewhere, and basically you have a lot here and a lot here or something. Now, the lease part of it, just like an easement, you can write a lease with a meets and bounds, right? You can do things like that, and that conveys rights, right?
Jason, if I can, yes, there's some leases that are out here already.
There are some.
Someone had mentioned a while ago that a user agreement would be a little bit more user friendly for this group.
Yep, and that's kind of where I was getting to, I just hadn't got there yet.
Okay, sorry.
So the thing is, you can also make a lot, and you could say, well, so-and-so would like to buy that land, right? And they're
that's
gonna
what
put
we've
it,
been doing, it's a wreck.
right,
Yeah, I understand it, so like, I'm
So-
picturing like this whole piece, even though like you're building stuff, it's one giant piece
right.
on a zoning map, there's no buildings, if you imagine, there's no map, and there's no roads. The next step is to figure out where the roads are, so are we keeping the existing roads, is that the first question?
Well, like for instance, this.
I mean, obviously,
road out
that
here,
road's a nice road.
That's a nice road, you should keep that.
Yeah,
The things are like, does this make sense anymore, right? You know,
Right.
should, and that's the things that we're gonna come back and say, well, the things you guys want programmed in these spaces. This doesn't make sense to have this here, and if we're gonna build a city road, then. That doesn't conform to a city standard anyway, so that thing's going away regardless, but.
when will you know if the city will allow us to build roads that don't need curb and gutter?
After this meeting, we're gonna.
Okay. Cause I think that that's huge.
That's something we have to decide.
They're gonna let you build a road out here, a public road.
Right.
How it looks is the question.
Right, but I mean, I just sit here and I think, I've been to other, people's fairgrounds, so that's the
Yeah.
example I've been using.
Yep.
It's, there's a lot of people that don't, a lot of guys don't have a lot of money, so they are literally driving gravel roads.
Yeah,
So, I
Watertown
mean-
Fairground is all gravel.
Right, and we love all that, and so it's like, my
But-
gosh, if the city says we got, the Burley County's gotta put curb and gutter. But you said, well, I
But you
don't
got
know.
two problems here. And,
Just keep, you got, don't build any more.
you know, here we are out here and we have some gravel roads, but they're not roads. It's a
Right.
gravel access
Oh.
to something, okay?
That's not a real road.
There's only one road on that whole plat.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's a gravel access. It's not a road, it's not maintained by the city, or
That's
it
a
doesn't
drive-
meet
that's a
false.
driveway to the
Right.
racetrack.
So-
that's the only thing,
Yeah, that's a driveway to the racetrack.
that's the only thing that's.
So if you came out here and said, we wanna ask for a gravel road.
Yeah.
You won't get it, you know why?
Why?
Because Burley County has a policy that says you're gonna pave all your roads.
Fire suppression.
Yeah,
That's been in place for 10 years,
okay,
okay?
yeah.
So that alone doesn't allow gravel roads out here. Cause we'd have to go,
You can ask,
we do,
you can ask not
I'll say,
to, not to.
We let those go every day, we.
They said, you don't need to make- it doesn't make sense. They don't make.
county engineer will weigh in and have to give a waiver.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, but that.
The other thing is an expectation too, the city's involved, so I don't think the city's gonna be game for that. But to my point about the leases is that there are some leases out here, and that is one way to go. But really, that hamstrings you guys so poorly. Because you guys have already, in the process that we've talked, have talked about space and things and stuff, and so. Just like that commission that changes down the road, right? Interests change and perspectives change and, I always think of it like this. My wife and I go build a house, and at the beginning, we're talking about X, Y, and Z, and at the end, you're like, God dang it, wish I would have known that time in the beginning, right? So. If you guys went to something that was more of a conveyance of some sort of, like a user agreement or something of that nature, that can give you guys the ability where things change and stuff, that you can react a little differently to it, right? And so, you know, to give somebody a 99-year lease and they're not using, you know, things as intended. People maybe at some point would say, geez, you know, it started here and now it's kind of not there anymore. So, you know, is this better suited to be talked about again, right? So just convey that to you guys as something that would give you some maneuverability for things.
But that's after the plot.
That's after.
So my question is, if the plot gets reported on June 10th.
Yeah.
Are those leases gone, or do they still
They're
exist?
still in effect.
They're still in
They're
effect,
still in effect.
even though they don't say, we don't have lot one anymore, so you're not reporting the plot with lot one, are you gonna have to? If you
No.
don't get rid of the leases,
No.
that's might be what my thought is.
You could go on to Enderin and you could go find.
Oh, cause it'd be in the history, so I could figure it out and,
Yeah.
okay, so that's fine, that's what my question was, it's like, we need to get those gone.
If you walk
First, to
away
get rid of
from
the lots.
leasing space, then as a group, you need to be able to have a projected route to go forward, and then also to be in agreement in the board voting to actually approve eliminating that lease space.
Which I'm suggesting,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, that over the next few months, we might want to start reviewing the options, and if we're gonna go into a user agreement, this group needs to set parameters of rules 1 through 10,
Yeah.
whatever they are, so that we are ready to make sure we have user agreements that is friendly for everybody out there.
Would that be a change in operations requiring approval of the county?
I would think, I don't know if it would require it, but it certainly would be beneficial to go to the commission and say, we're looking at changing the way we're operating within the commission or
I
within
would
the.
have concerns us
Yep.
deciding here in one fell swoop to get,
Right.
potentially get rid of any leases
Well,
that may exist without.
You just write the user groups, you know, for instance, for Buckstone. Would
Would it
that
make
user
sense?
group would be inclusive of what they currently have.
You know, this is something you wanna get an attorney involved in, because you wanna have things written in a very specific manner, and you want to be able to have how the conveyance is going to be projected of what you're proposing, but also to have that attorney to be able to give you, you know, that legal aspect. And he would give you guidance on how the process would be to start talking about the elimination. And you're right, it wouldn't be a one-time, like, we're gonna sit down and vote this. I throw this out here because it's a time element, right? It's going to take some time. It's going to take somebody crafting this. It's gonna take somebody with legal review. It's gonna take somebody to bring it to the board, discuss it, revise it, do the same thing a couple times before you get this thing narrowed down to a point where everybody's satisfied with it. And really kind of get it to a point where, you know, that may mean you might have 2 or 3 commission meetings, like maybe you're teeing this thing up and talking to them, and then you're giving them some updates in the process, and then at the end, like, here's kind of where we're kind of landing, right? And get everybody on board for that.
But that can all wait.
It doesn't happen
It does
right
not
now,
affect this.
but you guys should be really thinking
Yeah.
about these
Yeah.
things.
Sure. But I'm just worried about this whole,
Yeah,
Yeah,
this piece of it.
because if you go back and even read the current leases, none of them are the same.
No,
they're all conveyed in different manners.
they're all done different.
So we need to be on a consistent basis.
And I know this has nothing to do with the plot, but my question, like you said, in the.
Indirectly, it does.
So it does. Okay, so here's my question to Wayne. Is that something that the county would have to go out and put a bid on for an attorney?
No.
No, you could hire an attorney to.
We could
look into
hire an
it,
attorney.
Or, I don't, because I assume your district attorney doesn't do this, they do fencing.
Well, and Julie would weigh in at the very end
Yeah, sure.
to confirm.
But I mean, to find someone who do the research of what does Wings, you know, whoever's, their routes thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should put that on the agenda for next time and we can find this attorney.
Yeah.
Figure out the next step on how to get that.
There's probably 200 examples we could go to.
Well, that's what I'm thinking, like, I wrote down, oh, I should look it up, you know, like go down to Brookings, South Dakota, so look, there's a,
No, you
But-
got 200 right here in Bismarck.
Yeah,
Manor.
I mean.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying.
Doesn't the
you know,
parks do some of that?
Yeah, the parks have.
Yeah, this isn't anything new, this.
No, but-
Years, and the thing about
To
it
be
is, it's
ready
not
for
only an operating, but it also defines the development. Of sites by the groups that are occupying,
You know,
which then helps things like you brought in too, with the deck. And you know, and we have to understand that. Some people don't like it, but this is in city limits, so the processes have to be followed.
Is there a way to get us out?
Oh,
Cause on 52nd over there is Apple Creek
you
Township.
don't want to go. out.
County?
Because then you go.
see, the problem you're gonna have is that even if you say, can we be out? You're still in the 2-mile jurisdiction.
Oh,
of
it's
city
ETA,
limits.
so it doesn't really
Yeah,
matter.
no,
Yeah.
you're
it
there.
doesn't matter.
One other question for you, Jason. Is it-
Yes.
Probably for good discussion tonight yet, though, is in order for you to move forward with even the discussion with the city, you need some indication whether we're going to look at, or we would like private or public roads utilities.
And that's really what we're here for tonight is, I wanted to give you guys a very good background on the process and the timing of that process. Talk about, you know, the 2 different routes to go, but then ultimately, I'm here for you. So I represent you when I go to the city and your wishes, and so if we are going to be saying, yes, I think we should go forward with the public dedication of right of way, then we would go to the city and we would start all the discussions that we want to get through to discuss the parameters that will revolve around that in regards to planning and what they would do for us for construction and how we could work through what items could be special assessed, what have to be developer costs, all those things. And then we can come back and give a report back to you folks on those findings and where everybody lands. We didn't say today that we wanted to have us move forward with the plat. But we will get things prepared so that we can start getting to that, so we can come back to you and we can get your blessing on which route that you tell us to do, that we will have done our background, got our research done, had our conversations, and come with a proposal for where we think that right of way should be placed to start with for your consideration. So by all means, I'm not taking this as you said, but we just would like to know which way the compass is pointing.
I don't.
Hang on, Justin's gonna try and chime in here for a bit.
Yeah, and I think this is gonna answer her question too. I think maybe that if we had an internal operating map, separate from the plat. You divide it up into zones and then you assign the existing leases to zones. You have your occupied zones and then you have your empty zones. And then that way internally, basically you transfer those leases over to the zones. You don't use the word lot anymore. But you modify the leases to apply to this so everybody knows what's going on.
And then also, and I will throw this out here too, is that you got the lease, the use, that mechanism part of it, that to get through, but also start thinking about when somebody comes out here and they want to do something, what's your procedure? Do you have a pre-meet to come and discuss before they get a bunch of money involved in plans and stuff to talk something over, that you can give them something insightful to take back so that they can come back to you, right? Because that's the next thing, is that you're here for the public, you're here, and anyone that wanted to come out here, if they met 1, 2, 3, 4, 15 different caveats that you have laid out, that they can come and know that they can get a peer review from your board, which would allow them to prepare a set of plans to ultimately come back and get a blessing and then go to the city to get a site plan and a building permit. So there's those two things that are out there. These are totally separate from the plat, but it's very important, I feel, to move this way, because you guys are, in my eyes, no different than county, city type of staff, any departments or anything like that. Anyone that's providing a peer review or an approval, you're no different than that.
Can I ask a question about roads?
Yeah.
So technically, all the roads that are out here are owned by Burley County.
All the roads that are here are on Burley County's property.
Are on their property, and some of them are considered public. No, I'm going about it. Let me try again. So if we're to decide our road should be public or they should be private. But if the private road belongs to Burley County, is it not?
Maybe I can do it this way.
Is that's kind of what I'm getting at. Why does it happen? Because Burley County.
So there's a lot of access in here.
Sure.
Okay, so what I would say is the only road you have out here is this,
Okay.
okay? This asphalt road right now is, to my belief, being maintained and plowed by Burley County Road Department.
Yes.
Correct. Okay, it resides on Burley County property. It is within the jurisdiction of the city of Bismarck. Okay? If you had this publicly dedicated, the city would have a discussion with the county on who would plow and maintain certain roads in here. So of course, everyone knows that there's priorities. They're gonna go do all the emergency routes, and so at what point is it, and we've got a lot of roads, on 43rd Avenue, north of Satter's Sunrise Edition. That road goes from county to city to county, right?
Okay.
And so their kind of outstanding agreement is whoever gets there first plows it, right? Sometimes cities up there, sometimes counties there, but that's kind of how it works. So they don't just plow a piece and stop. My guess is this could be something like that too. It's a low priority. But if they'll get to it, it's like your local internal road inside of Bismarck, right? My house doesn't get plowed for 2 or 3 days, you know? Low priority could be the same type of thing, but there would probably be that discussion on that. But by dedicating the right of way, you are asking the city to operate and maintain that, right?
Who maintains the roads inside of that now? There's gravel roads, who does that? Anybody?
Well, I think if there's some gravel that needs to be placed, you know, that's probably a discussion with the road department in Burley County right now. But like, again, I would classify these as access, long driveways, right? So,
But I guess my bigger question is, because I kind of came into this thinking, oh, like after last meeting, like public just makes sense, right? Then
Yeah.
Bismarck's on the hook. But when you think about it, then the Bismarck people are funding the roads and all that, when really this probably is more used by the residents of the county, so why wouldn't it matter if the county kept the roads private? So we would be able to move the roads and do more without.
there's 120,000 people in Burley County. There's probably what, 85,000
Oh, I know,
people
but-
in the city of
But it's
Bismarck.
not a money thing, but it's like, you had said if it was kept private. Part of it, you're able to do things later without having to ask permission or.
You can still do things with a public road system,
Okay,
right? So there's a way to do that. You can ask for improvements, you can ask for changes. It's just you're involving the city.
okay,
So
but if we kept the roads
Okay.
private, is the only person we have to ask the county because it's their land.
Think of it like a car warranty. You know, you buy the car, if you're buying. So if you do the special assessment, the city can finance it with special assessment, the county has to pay that
there's a bond.
bond.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, then the county has to come up with the whole check when the transmission blows, right? So it's.
The county
When-
can bond
when-
their own road,
The county would pay for it 100%. Yeah.
but they couldn't take out their own bond like the city's going to.
The other part of the private though, to keep in mind, that the user groups within this complex are gonna be subject to probably a lot more costs.
We don't pay anything now, what
Well,
will we pay?
Okay.
To who?
So if you had a budget, for out here,
Yeah,
my guess is that would be taken out of that budget. Which will take away a lot of opportunities in the future to utilize the budget for something else. So,
And the commission is going to want the users to be paying a chunk of this, so that not all of it goes on taxpayers, no matter what, so it's a matter of how you split the pie.
Right.
but I mean, for instance, I'm gonna think of the motor cross track, which I can get to because I would cut through there on Sunday, it's 4-H using that back road, which I don't even know if the county has to open. Or not, but I mean, like, you don't need access to that in the winter. So, yes,
I think that's a slippery slope.
maybe that's different,
Yeah, I
okay,
think-
yeah, look at that.
that's,
I'm just saying, like, when you're saying we're gonna charge everyone for snow removal, well, you're not going there. Like, that shouldn't be a reason you say, I don't wanna have private roads, because you guys are saying, well, then each individual user group's gonna start paying these huge bills.
I feel that if we're going
Well, I
to.
mean, that's
look
more
at
like the user agreement thing than,
And that's where I think,
Roads.
in this instance, and I could be wrong, but as I'm looking at this. We cannot look at this as user groups. This is one piece of property that is owned by the county for the service to the public.
So
Not
that-
motocross, not buck stop, not 4-H,
so you.
all of that has to go away.
So you need us to tell you so that Wayne can ask the commission at the next meeting in 2 weeks, should
So
they
that
go
we can-
public or private?
so we could go discuss with the city, give you a report back. And then we would be able to get you guys set up with the facts and findings of what all the conditions can be.
And you're meeting with them.
We need to schedule a meeting,
Oh,
but we will be meeting with them as soon as we can get something scheduled.
But we wouldn't go to county commission until after
Till
that
after.
information. We're not going to county commission.
We come back to you first, and then if
So-
we get everybody on the same page. then
I'm just
we
gonna
go-
say, like, right now, I could sit here and say, I mean, is what you're looking for one of us to say, I move that we pursue private, or excuse me, I move to public roads. Is that what you're looking for?
You could.
Wayne, is that what you guys want?
You
So we can
could
just
say
discuss it and
that
vote?
I move to allow Swenson Hagen to go and investigate
Investigate, thank you.
the
What you want to say.
private road or the public right of way conditions with the city of Bismarck to provide a report back to this.
All you're doing is reporting back to us with what
Okay, but you need that to know.
we need to
We
know.
can move on. Okay, so I would move that Swenson and Hagen investigates with the city of Bismarck having the road system out here be public,
Dedication of public right of ways.
dedication of public right, clean it up, thank you.
I had it until you cleaned it up.
Make it right.
All right, so we have a motion on the table, and I believe I heard a second. The motion, as I understand it, is that or if it was voted, that this committee encourages, authorizes Swenson Hagen to go and discuss with the city the parameters of public dedication, public right of way dedication. Motion and a second, any discussion?
Yes.
Definitely.
So I have a question more towards Wayne. So. Is the county commission going to want to know the pros and cons of both? Before we pursue going in a certain direction?
Yeah,
I don't, yeah, sorry, Garrett, go ahead.
I mean, for me, you know, as a county commissioner, I can budget for the complex. Money to pay the city taxes. Okay, that becomes public dollars that we collect on property tax to do that. Or I can budget road maintenance, repairs, construction through the same process. Either way, I mean, I'm gonna try to be I'm not trying to sway anybody, because I'm just the outside guy, that you folks are the ones that are living and breathing this. But for me, it's a matter of me budgeting one way or the other. As long as everybody understands that that budget is derived from property tax. I don't believe that it should ever be a user fee out here. I don't think that's the right way. I'm not gonna start, okay, you've got, half an acre or you've got 10 acres and I'm gonna charge you accordingly. I don't think that's right. This is a facility that is the benefit for all residents.
That's what I was trying to get to.
Yeah.
Does it, I mean, I get that it matters to the city and it matters legally on a piece of paper, what we choose. So let's just choose something
Right.
and then go to you guys and you can change your
Yeah.
minds, because you're the ultimate decider of, are you gonna agree? I mean, maybe even Bismarck's gonna decide, I don't want them.
We're still at a point
we
where
just
we
need to
need them to go to the city
Yeah.
to.
And then it doesn't matter,
What
commissioners can change
what's
their
the
mind.
commission, what are your thoughts on which way would you wanna have it? So
I can
ultimately,
give
it's
you
gonna
my
come down to you
opinion
anyway.
based on, the last 2 years of working with the same group. They're gonna wanna have gravel roads so that they can maintain them themselves for less money.
Yeah.
But it's not a public road at that point. And that's what makes me a little nervous, because when we look at the growth of this complex. I mean, you can come out here and we can decide that this is gonna be our utility easement. And whoever develops inside has to figure it out from there. I can come in here and create a public street with dedicated right of way and utilities now come through here. And if 4-H petitions and wants to put a 60 by 80 building over here, you've got utilities that are close. If we do an equestrian center up here, they can come off here, or come off here, it doesn't matter. But I look at the smaller groups, I look at putting bleachers up here and getting this put back to the use that it should, or even grow it to be more of a shower house. So that when we do put our campground in here, we have access. You know, but if you do this as a public right of way, now you have better access for your campground. So it's. I can give you my opinion that the commissioners are gonna want it the cheapest way possible.
Well, that's why I was
Because-
just thinking, does it matter because it's private, but I made my motion.
Well, but they're gonna want it, but what is actually cheap? I'm gonna lean on Jason to tell me that in a 20 or a 30 or a 15-year project, whatever they do. You know, what's the cost of the county per year in taxes? Versus what's the cost of us budgeting our own construction and our own maintenance over that same time?
And in the essence of discussion, that's what I feel that we're missing. I'm not convinced, and I could be very much wrong. I'm not convinced that a motion and a vote at this point to dedicate you to do anything is the appropriate action. I feel as though we've talked about this particular specific thing, public versus private, for 3 meetings now. And I feel that, is there just some piece of information that we're missing?
But I think the motion is accurate, because we want Spice and Hagan
Yeah,
to go to the city and say, this is our thought process. Are you going to agree or not? You know,
We're not deciding anything one way or the other, it's just.
No, we're just
I just wanted
asking.
to do something, because they need to do something when they leave
Right.
the city.
we gotta make.
Yeah,
I mean, at this point, is it not just as sufficient to ask as the committee? Jason, will your group go and gather the information for the public or private and present at the next meeting? Am I outside of the bounds of Robert's rules of order? Right, but I'm just, but this is for in essence of
Yeah.
discussion. I'm not asking him to do it, but
If I may, I think it provides a direction from this group and starts that process of review and engagement of the group into the whole process of the complex up to the county.
Yep.
Jason, 3 things you and I have talked about before. 1, you're gonna get questioned by the city when you go meet. And they're gonna say, what do you wanna do? And we cannot put you in a position to say, well, they're thinking about private. And they might go public, and the city's gonna say, well, come back when you get an answer.
Yep.
Second thing. City's attitude towards private roads,
They do not like them.
okay, that's 2. Third one is there's present policies by both the city and the county on gravel, asphalt, curb gutter, everything else. We're not gonna go against those, we're not gonna win.
There are standards out there
Yeah,
for road
so-
construction.
So if we go public, that'll all come into play, or could.
If we go public, we get rid of most.
We get rid of all
the
those.
city has.
You get rid of those, burners.
Yeah. And like I said, for me as a county commissioner, I just budget one way or the other. You know, as long as everybody here understands that that's taxpayer dollars that are going to the development of this facility.
You know what I mean?
So if you had, and I know you have a motion on the table, if I could just interject something. There's 2 points that I take out of history, and the one thing was, after the flood and when we had severe snowstorms. Severe years with lots of snow. The county has had to alter some of the things they wanted to do that particular year because of constraints for spending unforeseen dollars. Having a special assessment would allow you to more budget appropriately. Because, if you take a road construction or a maintenance projects over 15 years, you know what that number is, right? Instead of saying, well, boy, this road really fell apart this year, we gotta come in and blow it all out and it's $1 million. So it's a little easier to do some management of budgets. I think we have to do it, so.
Jason, can it be 2 ways? And we have a east-west road, street, dedicated street. And still have that north-south on the west side a private? It's a driveway.
It could be with an easement, access easement, you know, if you drive on that road today. Relatively speaking, there's not a high traffic loading.
Right.
You guys are talking about consistently how you get to have all of these things, right? So when I look at this is another point of where your dollars lie and who's responsible. If that traffic loading goes up so high because now you're having concerts out here and you're having rodeos and you're having all of this traffic loading, what is that going to do to these roads, right? That road's pretty tough today.
Yeah.
So, I mean, would you allow a bunch of semis to go through there? To go to the equestrian center? Or to ship over here to the carnival to have that? Right, so.
I worry about all the buses that use them.
You know, so that's the other thing is. Some of that you can't relate back to, well, this road will fail at this time, so we're gonna budget X, right? But inherently, what, you know, tends to happen is it's a, whoa, boy, this thing really came apart quick this spring. And then all of a sudden, here you are, and you're gonna see things when you really start doing a lot of stuff out here, your traffic pattern goes up and, you know, you don't have 50 roads out here, you're gonna have a couple of main roads. And that's really what's gonna happen is that you're gonna start seeing some of those things that are tender come apart, come apart quick.
So I think, yeah, and Wayne's gonna laugh at this. I think that from an aspect, until we have commitments from the commission on certain things, we're kind of flying blind. Going public and using city financing on a special assessment kind of forces the county's hand to commit to taking a certain route. And it locks in the price a little bit better.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go forward on private and it's all on the county's back, it becomes a discretionary cost and it's gonna be one of the first ones to get cut.
Yeah.
So if you want it to be a permanent thing, you're better off running financing through the city rather than the county. That way, once you've committed to it, it's there, it's permanent.
And Jason said it best earlier, once commissions change, this body will change. If it's a committed expense, if it's a public street, that's done.
Yeah.
You know, doesn't matter who gets elected next, doesn't matter who comes on this board next, we've committed to that at that point.
So we have a motion on the table.
You actually have public right of way right now today, dedicated in this plat. That plat was done with publicly dedicated right of way.
We do have a motion on the table. Steve, can you remind us where we're at on?
Authorize Swenson Hagan to
Investigate.
investigate, yes, public right of way dedication of the plat.
It has been seconded. Discussion held, any additional discussion? Okay, and all in favor of the motion on the table, directing Swenson Hagen's next move, it signify by saying aye. Any opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our go forth and conquer.
Good luck. Yeah. I've been through 3 city engineers. Every single one of them has approached development from a different lens. So. You never know.
There's always the opportunity to get shot down in commission, but I think if we have a good background and basis using like that rationale right there, it's strong.
You go back to, it's a delivery of the product to the commission in the best light. And that best light is, this is easiest to budget for the next 15, well, how many, is it a 15-year?
I mean, you start seeing, kind of, maintenance starting in 7 years,
Yeah.
where you're doing, joint seals and You know, usually, you know, an asphalt, piece of section, which, you know, the gravel base, you know, is gonna get you out there, you know, in that 15 to 20 if maintenance is kept up and, you know, you can get pavement back, you know, 20 to 30 before they really start coming apart if it's done right.
Right.
So,
Would the special assessment just be to this land, or would it be to land also to the east, because they have the ability to use that road?
the district would be set up for the benefiting parties, so it would be the property, that, you know, we would ask for the adjoining property. So if I had a road go through here, and let's just say I had 2 lots, 1 lot, 2 lots, I petitioned 2 lots, those benefiting parties would get the assessment,
Nothing to the east.
nothing to do.
Engaged view,
And if they had improvements, you wouldn't get theirs either.
right. Because engaged view, that being a city street, benefits everybody to the east, they'll have a traffic or an alternate route. But they wouldn't be assessed anything.
Part of the network.
And the special is spread all across the county.
Right.
One mill or whatever will be spread against all the taxpaying entities, parties of the county. So it's relatively small. Muscle.
So do we have any say in how we would like that road or that street to look?
That's what we will be investigating now. We are going to push them to get on paper what they be able to stomach, because I'm sure we're gonna have some asks of them.
I have my own vision, but I don't know if that could save as others, so.
Yeah. Dave is a traffic engineer.
Yep.
That's where he came from. And, so he'll surely have some input. Get it out. But we also want to talk about the utilities, we want to talk about different mechanisms for you folks to see if there's ways to push off upfront costs.
I want the most usable land when we're done. I don't want a street through the middle of it where it's not.
What else do you need from us on the plat?
At this time, nothing. Thank you guys for everything. Hopefully we didn't make it more complicated.
It was nice to have the time to actually digest all of it instead of packing it in with several other agenda items, so thank you for taking the time to do that.
And then I think that part of the struggle that we've had is we kind of get to a point, and it's like, well, how are we done together? And so to actually have a thoughtful discussion about development is good, because this board, you know, electing to go see the whole thing through, have multiple things that you guys will be tasked with. So choose to go that route, so.
Is there any additional discussion on the plat from the committee? Okay. Without any further on the plat, I know we have also delved into number 5, this discussion releases operating and development stuff. Is there any additional information specific to the leases, operating agreements that you wanted to present? Okay, is there any burning discussion questions on that, post whatever we had discussed before by what we'd be looking at towards the future?
Give reference and examples for the
I think that would be good, is to see cases, yeah.
current operating development agreements that are in place.
Last item I have on the agenda is 2025 meeting scheduling. Steve had a suggestion for the third.
Third week of the month. And it's noon a good time again, maybe that's good as any time, they got the evening and. I will, send some dates over to, Auditor Skowski and see if the room will again stay at top of the room. I tried Tuesdays, third week of the month. So, what's that good?
Silence is consent, any other? No.
We have any other meetings in December?
No.
All right,
We had to schedule, Yeah.
okay.
I think we all got busy enough numbers as it is. All right, yes, Steve.
I think we should give, Winston Hagan a hand for.
Yeah.
Good job so far.
Agreed. It's definitely more difficult that you're taking a very newly formed group and some very old, I don't see problems, but opportunities to fix things that have been done differently in the past, so, yeah. Also, thank you to Box Top Junction for hosting. I hope I can speak for the group that have pulled in.
I love it.
The inside, yeah, anytime you guys want to use it. So, thank you for that.
Another thing, this Saturday, we're having hayride out here, kids and stuff.
AR Christmas have decent weather.
It's supposed to be Saturday. So bring your wives and kids out.
Santa will be here.
Take your wife on a date on a hayride.
Anything else for the good of the order? All right, we'll stand in adjournment till next.
Thank you,
Merry Christmas
everybody.
to y'all.